This is Dr. Elena Villanueva.
And I'm Dr. Ryan Wolfert.
And we're so happy to have Jonathan Otto joining us today. I can't tell you how excited I am. You might have heard of him as the investigative journalist and filmmaker who's had the recent releases of his films, Anxiety and Depression Secrets and Autoimmune Secrets. Jonathan, welcome. We're just thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Elena. It's a privilege to be here with you and Dr. Wolfert. It's super fun to explore these topics together and see how we can bless and help others that are going through their journey right now.
Yeah, thank you for being here. You know,
Yes.
Your recent documentaries, they've reached people around the globe. And your documentaries have given people hope because they are full of education and you're able to get experts around the world, like you have procured, literally, the top brain experts around the world to, educate people that they are not broken, that there are answers and there are solutions. But I'm curious, why did you become so passionate about anxiety and depression and finding what the underlying causes were? Can you share that with us?
Sure. So for me, Dr. Villanueva, it was always about trying to work out what could make a difference for someone. That was clear to me as even a child. I mean, sometimes people, when they're young, they get like a vision for what their life should be. And I had that from a young age, and it was and still is to do with solving social justice related issues in the world and seeing people that are in suffering come out of that place of suffering. So, and hence why even when I was young, I was fundraising for charities. And as soon as I finished high school, I was traveling through Africa and Asia, working with people that were malnourished and in poverty and suffering. And so for me, as I came to understand and research more, I understood that there were major issues here in the Western world as well. And I'd written that off before. I just thought everyone's fine here. This is fine. But then when I saw the suicide rates in the Western world being the highest compared to, across the world, even Australia, my country of origin, is one of the highest in the world. The US, one of the highest in the world. And that really affected me. And because I felt of what were these people going through? And once I removed myself from a place of judgment, like judging these things and judging somebody, their decisions are based on them doing something wrong or being, and then I realized, hold on a second, this is actually to do with some major issues that are happening inside the body. And that was through a pursuit of knowledge, because once I saw people suffering, I then pursued knowledge. And then as I pursued knowledge, then I started to discover everything that I thought about these subjects was mostly like wrong. And I had so much to learn for my own sense of mental well-being myself, because even though I was not necessarily ever classified as clinically depressed, I went through depression and anxiety myself. And so I had to find answers for myself. And then in latter times, after marrying my wife, we've been married 6 years now, my beautiful wife, Lori, and we have a baby boy, Asher, 1-year-old. And after discovering that this was really relevant for us because she was suffering from severe clinical depression and anxiety. And so these were some of the reasons why I went after this. And I felt like it was my responsibility to learn for myself and for the benefit of others.
And I mean, this is the Leaky Brain Summit. And what we've been discovering from the other experts in our own research, Dr. V and I, is leaky brain. Remember, just as a reminder, it's a breach of the blood-brain barrier. So things like toxins and heavy metals and pesticides and herbicides are getting in, and not enough stuff, and they're not getting out because there's a breakdown of this blood-brain barrier from different lifestyle issues, from even poor sleep, not enough exercise, poor nutrition, poor mindset. And I mean, you talked about anxiety and depression right there, and clinical depression. Now, have you seen in your travels, in your interviews, in your philanthropy work, talking to experts, one, initially when you were going through it and when you said what you were learning wasn't right, but now by you getting the knowledge, what is it saying about leaky brain and anxiety and depression connection?
Absolutely, Dr. Wolfert. So in me questioning my own paradigms and what I understood, and working with and connecting with some of the world's most foremost educators that are well known. And again, like, I didn't just search people that were well known. I, from my own research, felt compelled in their knowledge research, and then latter verified that through interviewing case studies. I mean, Dr. Villanueva knows that. So instead of just like taking her word for it, I asked her to bring in patients so I could verify it with them and discover more. And so, you know, and I saw amazing things when discovering inside of Dr. Villanueva's practice, as an example. But as I went and connected with these experts and looked at their research and information, the big paradigm shifts that happened for me and my knowledge deepening and the things that are really valuable for people to pick up and understand here is that it being in your head, like, for example, which is obviously a reference to hypochondria, so that you're imagining something is wrong with you, is the inference being in your head. But even the concept of it being depression, anxiety being a chemical imbalance in the brain, and then trying to work out, well, as if that it was deficient, like as if the brain had a Prozac deficiency or another Lexapro or another antidepressant, and it was deficient in this antidepressant. That's what was the real problem here. And so here's the drug. And so that was one of my false paradigms that I had, that I thought that perhaps there was just something wrong in people's their brains. And because of that, they were kind of destined to be more unhappy than the rest of the population. And they were destined to have to rely on some kind of drug to be able to, pad that issue. So, in searching deeper, then the gut-brain connection was a big one. And I want to go deep with the audience here, so I can just kind of, as you guys have requested of me to, give the best knowledge and information, the discoveries that could be most valuable for people. So going into, why is the gut? Because everyone here listening has some recollection, because they're already educated, because I believe I'm not the first talk in this series. So they're already educated at the point that the gut and the brain are connected. So I'm not going to even bother, right? So that, okay? I'm talking to you. You know that the gut and the brain are connected. We know that 90% of serotonin is produced in the gut. 90%, right? So that's a lot. So if you have a neurotransmitter issue, which is serotonin being a neurotransmitter, as well as dopamine or epinephrine, norepinephrine. These are all due to the fact that the gut isn't producing these for you. And why is the gut not producing them? Well, sometimes that's because we're not fueling them with foods that work well in that conversion process. And so you simply, going to eat McDonald's every day, that is not going to work out well for you in terms of producing the right fuel for the neurotransmitters. So that can be a reason. But then a lot of people listening, like, I don't go to McDonald's every day. I actually try to eat healthy, and I believe you, right? Then it gets more specific. So then it's like, okay, well, let's have a look. Is all the things that you think healthy for you? And so one of those would be, looking at wheat consumption. Wheat, do I eat, bread? But I don't eat it that much. I just, once a week or once every couple of weeks. And those exposures continually for anyone, in my opinion, from my research. But secondly, anyone that has a sensitivity, which I believe, again, is everyone. But you're going to continue to see flare-ups due to creating tears and issues with the gut and the intestinal tract. And this is what we know from research and from what we know about the genesis of wheat as of the 1960s, and the fact that we created a semi-dwarf high-yield plant that was knee-high instead of head-high, and yielded 8 times as much as it did before that time. And this was before GMO laws came in 1994. So then it can be classed as organic, but it still is perhaps one of the most mutated foods and alien species that we can eat. And these things, like the genetic alterations, can cause such issues with brain chemistry. And these are the things that I learned with looking at the data, interviewing experts and their patients, and seeing that, like, even in the reintroduction, you look at someone like Dr. Daniel Amen, who's kind of known as the most sought after neurological, brain health doctor in the country. And one of the patients, he tested them with three foods after having taken him off them. This person is suffering from severe depression and suicidal thoughts. And then now in the reintroduction of these 3 foods, which were dairy, corn, and wheat, they were wondering if any would trigger. And then normally it takes a little while for it to surface, right? So you've got to wait the course, say 30 days being an example. And so wheat was introduced and no major trigger straight away, right? So, okay, like, got it. Next one, dairy, no major trigger straight away. Corn, now within 20 minutes of eating the corn, he has a vision, like an image passed through his mind, and he sees himself picking up a gun, putting it in his mouth, right? Within 20 minutes, according to Dr. Daniel Amen, one of the most sought after medical health experts, medical doctor that is going specifically after brain health, suicidal ideation under just corn, and you think you're eating healthy. And again, so it's about knowing, and again, GMO corn obviously being the major culprit there. But again, if someone has a sensitivity at that point in time to corn in general, then these are some of the things that we need to think about. So it's deeper knowledge, and it's about actually trying these things out on ourselves and being willing to think bigger and willing to change habits as well.
That's such a great example with the, with the corn and the three major culprits that you mentioned. Definitely have a lot of science behind them as showing to be, causative factors in psychosis, in patients. We have personally seen no less than a handful of patients who, when they reintroduced wheat products, they went almost immediately into like a 5 or 6 day episode of manic depression, massive panic and anxiety attacks, and suicide ideation actually returned. And so thank you so much for sharing that. Dr. Wolfert, what do you have to say about that?
And that's what we're saying on this summit is these mental health disorders. It's not just a mental health issue, it's a physical brain issue by what we're put into our body. It's, they go to the doctor, they give, symptoms, and within 3 minutes, they have a diagnosis of, oh, you have anxiety, you have depression, ooh, that's schizophrenia, ooh, that's bipolar disorder. After 3 to 5 minutes of talking to you, they're categorizing you already, haven't asked you about your diet, haven't asked you about your nutrition, and guess what? They're not trained to do that. So in a way, I understand it, but also we have to change that mindset, change that paradigm of, okay, we have to start doing that, because I think it's just, it's silly, honestly, and silly and logical at the same time, how anybody could say, well, how does food like help my mood? But yet they're very willing to take a pill, which is essentially the same thing as food, as far as it's a chemical giving you information on how your body builds. So it's once you explain it in those terms, then they start to get it. So, I mean, that's my impression of it. I just wanted to, again, tell the listener, that's why we have this. That's one of the reasons Dr. V and I wanted to do this summit, was to show you that, okay, maybe you are suffering with anxiety or depression or sad thoughts. One, it's okay. We're human beings. We're not going to be happy all the time. We have to train ourselves to do that. So this is one way to do that. And number two, there are physical brain issues that happen because of the lifestyle that we lead.
So well said. So well said. Jonathan, talk to us about another underlying cause. We hit foods, which is, I would say that is at the top of all of the causes of, neurodegenerative issues and mental health disorders, not just because of the genetically modified foods, but because of the chemicals within the food, because they cause a lot of inflammation and they tear the gut lining, which leads to tearing the blood-brain barrier lining. But what other things have you learned about through doing all of your research?
Absolutely. And some of these deeper things are really helpful, because I know that there's a whole portion of people watching this right now, and then they're feeling a little discouraged because everything we've talked about so far, they've heard it, right? Which is cool. So I just want to talk to those people right now and let you know, look, there's a lot more, and it's simple, and yet chances are you have not done perhaps any of these things that we're about to talk about, or there's some that you haven't, and those things that you have not done could be, and very likely would be, those things that you could simply just try out and do and finally see a change happen in your mental state. And overall health and well-being, right? Because that's the real goal here. And that's why I thank God for symptoms, because they are warning lights in the car that help us. And somebody, is watching right now that is coming here because they have a major issue and they're feeling really upset about the fact that they can't kick this depression, anxiety, and sitting there in their face, or their mild cognitive impairment. Leaky brain is certainly, people are going to come that have basically the early signs of dementia, and these people are needing answers. Yet the answer that you find, if you truly search for the true answer that is the true root cause solution, not only will you help to ward off the challenge that you're facing today and feel better and reach that goal that you're wanting, but you'll get a goal that you maybe weren't looking for, and that's prevention of major chronic disease down the road that can and likely could be fatal. Again, we just don't have this happening here in America, where people are dying. The deaths that we see, an expert that we had in one of my earlier series, Dr. Ellsworth Wareham, who died at 104 with no, and he was like 102 when he was in our interview, and yet he died. His daughters reported no cognitive impairment at his death, nothing that they could see visibly. Obviously there's probably something, but nothing that impaired his ability to talk, communicate, remember. These are the types of things that we want to see. And he, you can look at the Fox News article story on his life, because he retired as a surgeon at age 95. You didn't hear me wrong. Look it up. It's true.
Wow.
95. So these are the pursuits that we all ought to have. And so, so what's the answer to the question? What's the discovery? What are the extra things that people are missing that they have not perhaps discovered? And then by unsurfacing these things, they could have a total turnaround. Well, so we looked at the food sensitivities, again, huge, but now let's go deeper again. So then the next thing would be, so then what are the foods that could be nourishing, or whether through food or supplemental form, to boost deficiencies that would help you either to quiet the inflammation being a trigger, so the inflammation of the gut leading to the inflammation of the brain. So a simple tool, omega-3. There's been perhaps no more studies on any supplement and its connection to the brain than omega-3. And again, because of the heavy metal issues that exist, then if you want to mean an omega-3, you can go plant-based, but then you need to make sure that they're not rancid. So you should open the pill and smell it. And if it's rancid, that can be very common with plant-based. The ones that I use are from small fish, like anchovies and sea harvested. So just understanding those things, because you don't want to be getting those exposures. But those types of things, omega-3s, can balance people's brain chemistry so quickly and so efficiently. And we will talk about essential oils, but the reality is that there's only actually two essential oils, and it's omega-6 and omega-3. They're the only two that you can't live without. Essential means vital, which means you can't live without this, and you can live without frankincense, even though it's amazing. And I don't suggest that you put it aside. You should use it. It's great. But the only two essential oils are omega-6 and omega-3. Omega-6 are in no shortage in your diet, I can guarantee you. They're easily come by because all the carbohydrates that have them, even good carbohydrates. So coming over to omega-3, supplementing with omega-3 can make a huge difference. See how it goes. D3 and K2 have the same effect when it comes to brain chemistry in terms of helping to quiet inflammation, helping to give the brain some of the tools that it's needing to help the process of breaking down, helping the body to be able to have the fuel that it needs. And now I just mentioned breaking down food. That's where digestive enzymes are very, very powerful. Now, digestive enzymes can come from papain, which is papaya. In Australia, we call that pawpaw. I nearly said pawpaw, so I was like, okay. There's some education for everyone. Australians say pawpaw, not papaya. So papaya, and also through bromelain, which is pineapple. So then you've got these are the plant-based, and then there's pancreatic enzymes from animal-based products, and they exist as well. But the ones that I've had a lot of experience with and seen a lot of success with is particularly on the plant-based side of those digestive enzymes. So simple, just to take 2 capsules with a meal. And the benefit then you get out of the meal is your body's ability to break it down. So people always say you are what you eat, but the thing that people really ought to say is you are what you digest. If you don't digest that food, it's not valuable to you. In fact, you could spend your whole paycheck at Whole Foods and still have an unhealthy meal that's causing you harm, not because the food is unhealthy, but because your body lacks the ability to secrete the digestive enzymes. And because of that, you still don't get better. You always feel bloated after meals. Again, if you're having bloating after meals, that is a great warning light going off to work on that digestion, which means 2 things: taking something to help that digestive process. Secondly, eating foods that are easily digest. Corn is not easily digest. Wheat is not easily digest. And the heavier meat products as well can be harder to digest. Like, so that's the downside with high meat intake diets. You see, I mentioned Dr. Ellsworth Wareham. I mean, he was part of the Loma Linda Blue Zone, so they're very low in their animal intake. So it's about moderation and seeing what some of those groups do to remain in like mental clarity and keep that mental focus. A lot of people aren't talking about that, but again, do the research and have a look at what the Blue Zones say in regards to diets that are conducive for long-term brain health. And so there's just a couple about the things that we're putting in, and then the next part, but I'll take a pause there so we can all take a minute to digest, pardon the pun, what I just said. But the next part we'll go into, if you guys want to, is in regards to toxins and how to remove toxins, because that part, I think everyone's going to really be on the edge of their seat for that.
Yeah, I think that, talking about your ability to digest foods, that's certainly very, very important, because the inability to digest foods can lead to a plethora of different issues, including, affecting your gut's ability, to make the brain chemistry. And since we're getting ready to get into infections, we should mention too that the digestive enzymes, or certain types of other supplements like HCl can actually be very beneficial, not only in aiding the body's ability to break down foods, but also to help eliminate infection. Dr. Ryan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I'd love to add, a lot of the listeners are probably taking supplements, and they've taken supplements after supplement. Like, it's not helping. And I think even what I do, what Dr. V does, what Jonathan is saying is, okay, he's not advocating just taking a bunch of supplements. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No,
initially, right. to help heal the body, yes, we have to do things a little bit differently, because it's so hard to get these nutrients from our foods nowadays. Yes, in the beginning, you might have to take a few more supplements, a few more vitamins, a few more minerals to help heal your brain, to help heal the leaky brain, heal your gut. But eventually, as you're doing that, you're learning how to eat, you're learning how to sleep, you're learning how to exercise. It's not just, okay, we take a pill and it's fixed. And that's, again, a great misnomer that I get. We equate quick fix. What do we equate quick fix with? If I said to the general population, quick fix, they'd say, oh, surgery, or I'll take a pill. And neither of those actually get to the root of the problem, typically. But in general, they don't. So I just wanted to add that in there. Jonathan, you can add more to that, and then go on right into the toxins.
Awesome. No, that's great. It's a perfect balance of things, right? And it's just about knowledge and education, right? So just if the listener right now, if you're just seeking after knowledge, then you are less like espoused to your creed, that thing that you believe. And I have a lot of things that I'm very passionate about that I believe quite strongly, and I'd fight tooth and nail on it, like lots of different things that I believe, right? But I try to be humble, everything that I'm listening to, and I reassess everything, and then just work out, what am I not seeing here, and where am I being a little bit proud in my perception here, and what does it hurt for me to try something new to see if it will get me good results. But again, like in terms of just to question that paradigm, again, the food is the biggest part of it, yet some of the things that come in supplemental form can certainly be a huge asset for people to take and understand, so they can get the most out of their food and combat some of their toxic exposures. And that gets us into this this chapter that you just asked about in regards to toxic exposures. And I can share some really amazing breakthrough case studies that have come through even just recently with things that are super relevant for I think all the listeners. And again, I've been in the same situation as everyone, like having loved ones suffer, like my father-in-law with chronic liver and particularly kidney issues, where his kidney function, 3 years ago, dropped under 10%. There's a reason why he's 8% actually, in fact. And there's a reason why today he's still not on dialysis, which should be shocking. That's 3 years. 8%, you can't, 15% is where you get put on dialysis. So why is he still, towing the line? And he may see this, which is totally fine, but I can tell you right now that he is nowhere near as compliant. It hasn't been in the past. Right now, I believe that there might be a certain change that's happening because there's been some boats burnt, if you will, in terms of some of the prospects with the transplant, which mean that now he really needs to work on his kidney function. But because of that, Dr. Villanueva, you know a bit about this case, and I know you're not going to talk about it because because of the confidentiality. But hey, I'm the son-in-law, so that's different. So, but a big takeaway with his case study would be that the certain supplements that he was taking and what they were doing for him worked so powerfully that he's been able to ward off dialysis. And I even saw it, we have a lady that comes in here to help us clean here at the house because we live busy lives and we like to be clean. And she's awesome. She comes in, babysits the baby often as well. And I just hey, go take these things for your dad because he's on dialysis, right? And in less than a month, he's got his vibrance back and he's halved the amount his blood needs dialysis just off that. So don't underestimate the power of that. And she has herself rheumatoid arthritis. And again, all these things, they have depression associated with them. I've almost never found someone that suffers from extreme autoimmunity that has not faced depression and anxiety. And her rheumatoid arthritis is basically in remission. The numbers don't, so her inflammation levels are so low that she's asymptomatic. But yeah, come over to, so what are these things and how do they work? So a few of the key things we see in terms of how do you address the inflammation? Because I could show you studies that show parasites and their effect on psychology, the brain function. And even if somebody is just likes to entertain themselves and wants to go on Amazon and look up parasite cleanses and then have a look just in the comments, just read through the ones that have hundreds of comments and have a look at the trends. And you'll find that people they haven't been solicited for this in the majority of the cases. And then what's happening is there's so many of them writing about no longer having depression, no longer having anxiety. But how could that be possible? They just did a parasite cleanse. Yet we're seeing it. I see it in so many different contexts. I can tell you, okay, right? So the Toxoplasma gondii parasite, which is, it's a lot of it's passed through cats, right? So, even if you don't have a cat, like someone has a cat, blah, 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 it passes around. It's currently affecting 60 million Americans infected, right? 60 million Americans, one parasite, right? There's 300 parasites that are known to be in humans, about 100 commonly in humans, the giant roundworm being in 1 billion people worldwide. So just to give you to realize the question isn't am I infected, but how much am I infected? In my opinion, just again, do your own study, see what you understand. And the reason for that is largely due to the fact that we have destroyed gut microbiome unwittingly, largely through GMOs and other things like alcohol consumption. People don't realize that, you get a cut on your hand or your arm. What do you do to make sure that doesn't get infected? Well, you put alcohol in it. Why? Because it kills what? Bacteria. Good, yes. And bad, yes. It kills bacteria universally. But now that we understand the microbiome, the majority of the microbiome that we have, hopefully if we have at least Gut dysbiosis is just the bad outweighing the good. All you're doing is you're sending a fight to the wrong guys, helping them win against the guys you need to win. And then guess what happens when your microbiome die? Then guess who comes to take over? Parasites, because parasites get killed on command by microbiome. Microbiome are trained. They're like ninjas. They're stealth weapons. They're like, see that thing, like you're dead, and they'll chop them up. They'd be gone and out of the system, right? But that's not how it works when you killed them off and you're defenseless and the troops come in, you're in big trouble. So that's why we need to help our body go after these big critters. And everyone's talking about like Candida and SIBO and, some of the, like even repairing the tight junctions in the gut. And these things are all really great subjects, but if you don't go after the bigger organisms, there's a hierarchy, then they will keep unsettling the system. So again, but why do I bring up Toxoplasma gondii? Because of a case study that was done on Toxoplasma gondii, the people that had it versus those that didn't have it, the people that had it were, guess how many times more likely to attempt suicide, according to this one trial that was on it. 7 times more likely to attempt suicide if you had the Toxoplasma gondii parasite that was known to create all kinds of unusual behaviors, even in mice, for example. It would cause the mice to not be afraid of cats, which isn't a good, that's a misplaced fear, but it was because the parasite had the ability to control a part of the brain of the mice, and then wanted to be fed to the cat, and so therefore caused the mice to lose fear of the cat. But we see that the National Geographic study was done on ants, same type of thing. Ants were feeding themselves to other animals. And again, like people like, but I can't control my food cravings. Everything you're talking about, Jonathan, is so hard for me because I just am a food addict. I just eat whatever I want to eat and I can't stop myself, and I feel bad, and it's horrible, and I just want to get out of this cycle. And I've tried every New Year's, I do a New Year's resolution, it never works, it lasts a couple of days. All right, so do something that helps to rebalance the system, get the parasites out of the body, and watch what happens to your cravings. They will change. It's that amazing. Okay, so that's just the parasites. I mean, the heavy metals, huge. That's a big deal. Depression, anxiety caused by heavy metal toxicity. Look up the studies. There's a lot. And what you'll find is the heavy metals and parasites, both of them that are linked to depression, anxiety, wheat consumption as well. Guess what? All of the ones that are typically linked to depression, anxiety are also linked to, guess what? Neurodegenerative disorder, including depression, dementia, and Alzheimer's. And that's why you can see studies where the people that had depression were 4 times more likely to get Alzheimer's. So that's a much higher likelihood. But again, it shows you that you're not just depressed because something went wrong in your life, and that happens too. But in most cases, it's because there's some underlying health issues that then create inabilities to be able to deal with the stress that should be coped with in natural methods that have been dealt with through human history, even with the loss of loved ones. These things are things that we do have that human resilience and capability to cherish memories of our loved ones. And Dr. Villanueva is like an amazing example of someone that's been able to deal with these very things that we're talking about, because there's deaths of loved ones, but then there's the deaths that are even more tragic and hard to deal with. And Eleanor has had to deal with those, and she has, you look at her life, you look at what she's doing, and the tenacity at which she helps people, her passion. And, I know her personally as a friend, and she has been able to move through that in such extraordinary ways. So you see examples of this with people with huge capacity, and then other people that are stuck in that pain, so they can't give back, they can't go and achieve and do great things and develop in their lives because they can't deal with that pain. So what I encourage people to do is to correct the system, cleanse the system, fuel it with the right ingredients, get these toxins out. And then by doing so, you'll see yourself rise to new heights and have a confidence against all the kind of chronic disease you see people that are struggling with right now. And you be a light against those things too.
Oh, man. One thing that I mean, that's just perfect. You put it all together there. One statement that I loved that you said is, it's not, basically, to paraphrase, it's not whether you have it, whether you're infected or not. It's how infected are you, and how is your body able to process that out? How is it able to get rid of the infection, the heavy metals? And if it's not, and if it just keeps building and building and building, it's going to break down your gut, break down your brain, break down the blood-brain barrier, and then that leads to anxiety, depression, all the way up to Alzheimer's and dementia. Dr. V, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm just, I started thinking about some of the stories that you and I have shared, Jonathan. You're absolutely right. For those of you who don't know, I have gone through a lot of this that we're talking about, and I've had to take myself through all of the different steps of, changing my food. I had to make some big changes to the foods that I thought were healthy for me. And, and then also eliminating infections and putting the right nutrients in. And then the other big one too was, working through that pain. I had to learn to, detach from my emotions and not attach from them. And, once we can learn to detach from our emotions and, not attach to feelings and realize that that's all they are, that is also a really big step in making those lifestyle changes that we all have to make. It's not easy and it can be overwhelming, but it's going to be the best thing that you've ever done for yourself. And, and if it takes you a decade to master being able to face your fears and face the pain and not attach to your emotions, then so be it, because you're most likely, hopefully, going to be around longer than the time that it takes you to master that. And, as you can start mastering that, you can become more disciplined and you can make the changes that you need to make. That's super powerful, John.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. V. And I appreciate it. And it's really great, Dr. Wolfert and Dr. Villanueva. You both truly, through your own clinical experience and work today and all the different research and influencing and clinical practice that you do, you understand so deeply the mechanisms of healing. And that's why I've sought after both of you for the work that I've been doing, and of the millions of people we reach with Health Secret and with Well of Life. I love the fact that I can call on both of you to be expert guests, people that help me to understand certain things that I'm needing to catch up on. And so again, I appreciate your knowledge and contribution to the field.
And I want this to be a lesson for the listener. Is we always, Dr. V, Jonathan, and myself, we haven't always been healthy. I mean, you heard Jonathan's story. Dr. V touched on hers. When I was 13 years old, had my first migraine headache. I was sick all the time, 4 or 5 times a year growing up. I've gone through brain fog, low energy. Up until like 6 or 7 years ago, I equated drinking milk with strong bones. I remember my health coach saying, again, this is those beliefs that you were talking about, Jonathan, where you plant your feet down, because I remember she said, man, I mean, milk and dairy, that's probably just as bad as what wheat and grains are. Is like, what? Are you kidding me? So, we've had these. We've had to work through them. We understand what you're going through in this. So just know that we've been in the pit before. We've learned how to get ourselves out of it and not giving up, and showing our patients and clients how to do it too. Either of you want to add anything onto that?
No, it's perfect. It's nice that you guys are taking the time to work with and connect with people, because we're all going at different paces, and with so much of this is down to this implementation part. And a lot of the tools that I'm giving are to help you with compliance. And when I say compliance, meaning so that you can actually do and complete these things. My objective in sharing the things that I'm sharing is to help you be able to feel better, so that you can continue to do these things. And everything I'm talking about, there's not a single thing that I said to do as like a short stint or a diet that would be very unachievable. I'm talking about just making changes. Like, for example, when I go to a restaurant, I don't sit there looking at food that I can't eat and salivating like, oh, but if I could only eat this. Like, would you want to eat something on the menu if you knew it had concrete in it as one of the ingredients? You'd be like, that ends up being disgusting to you, right? Or if something had like arsenic or some kind of poison, and it just said it there on the menu. It says like, such and such. It has, cranberries, romaine lettuce, blue cheese, and poison, rat poison. You look at that and be like, better ask the waiter about this. Does this actually say rat poison? No, it does say rat poison. It's there on the menu. Like, we're serving it up. It's like special today. You'd be like, that is absolutely disgusting. You wouldn't say that. Well, you would, but you don't need to insult your waiters with the knowledge I'm about to give you here. But what you do need to do is like look at what it's actually doing to your body. The reason why you salivate over a food that you ought not have is because you don't understand what it's doing to you. You haven't let that sink in. You haven't let that image really pass before you, and you're not present to the harm that's doing to your body. And me having a 1-year-old baby, I'm obviously careful with what I feed to him. I finally got the Wi-Fi switched off again, like for anyone that's interested in EMFs, and because of him, even though I should have done it much sooner. I'm corded Wi-Fi, so I'm obviously still on the internet, so it's no big deal. Like, everyone can do this kind of stuff. But when you start to think about, what would you do to somebody else if this was like somebody that was like this little baby and that can't defend himself, and he's just, and you love him, what would you pour upon this child? What would you fuel him with? How would you bless him with your words and comfort? And again, like, he's 1 and he's already got rambunctious emotions, and he's like kind of crazy, like, but it's so cute and cool, and I love him, right? So like seeing yourself like that little baby, and like, what do I fuel myself with, and loving yourself that deeply. Because if I could tell you the reason why we're all harming ourselves so much with our food choices and with our lack of discipline with sticking to certain things, or our lack of ability to just say, hey, I'm going to go do a parasite cleanse or something, is because we don't value and love ourselves deeply enough. And that there's no other reason that you could justify some of the abuse that we've either wittingly or unwittingly put ourselves through. I've done it to myself, and I've had to learn to love myself more deeply than ever before, because I've needed that to be like the husband to my wife and the father to my child, and just to be able to deeply, be in love with life and passion of life, and to follow, because again, me being someone that faith is deeply important to me, so to fully fulfill what I believe God's potential is for my life, I need to do these things. So I encourage you to take those steps yourself and just get to that place where it's not about this unique one thing, and it's just about this decision, and that decision will change everything. Like, I'm willing to love myself. I'm willing to do something different. I'm willing to learn things new. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to get into these old habits, because I love myself enough. It doesn't matter how many wrong mistakes I make with my child. I'm just not going to give up on that journey. I'm going to make sure I work it out, even through all the mistakes that I make as a young father, right? So just yourself, you'll be the same way. Please don't, I implore you, I encourage you not to make it into a performance-based challenge that you create for yourself, because the performance-based challenge, I've always looked for solutions to get out of this performance-based mindset. One of the things I do is every week, I have a day where there's no work, and it's like basically a rest, right? So historically, these things would be called like Sabbath or rest. It is the direct translation. But it teaches my brain and my heart and everything in me that I'm valued not because of what I do, and my performances don't equal how valuable I am to God, to other people, or myself. They're simply ways that I manifest the love and appreciation I have of myself and others and my life. They're not mechanisms to gain approval, to make me feel that I'm good enough. And I've struggled with that most of my life and felt like I've had to achieve, and it's burnt me out, and it's made me depressed. It's given me anxiety. It's made me feel like I can never switch my brain off. And these were huge steps for me in that healing process, to know that I'm loved as I am, without having to do anything to achieve that. So then I can fail, and I can succeed, and neither of those will affect my self-worth. And because of that, I can go and do extraordinary things, and I can go and try new things, because I don't have any association with failure associated with that issue. and certainly much less. I you know, again, it's a daily experience, but it's night and day, and that gives me peace, and that helps me so much.
Well, this is such amazing information, Jonathan. You know, we have talked about foods, we've talked about gut function, we've talked about infections, and we've even talked, you know, about mindset and self-love and, you know, learning to master our emotions. But we haven't talked about heavy metals. And well, we did touch on it, but what we didn't talk about were some of the specific supplements that we can use and some timelines whenever we're talking about heavy metals, because we know that that can take one of the, you know, those protocols can be some of the longest that people can go through in order to get rid of them. Talk to us a little bit more about that and give us some details on the different types of supplements we can use.
Sure. So there's a few things that I think that people should think about and understand when it comes to doing this kind of cleansing, and the tools that are available to help us get out and bind toxins. One of them being metals, because that's very hard for the body to get rid of. And again, like if you have a gene mutation, the MTHFR gene mutation, then it's going to be harder again to chelate metals, but it's hard for everyone. And then because of that, we have them residing in the system, and then we can have them even go into organs and bones. And now how do we get them out? So then to get them out, some of the tools, you know, you can even see studies that have been done on cilantro when people have like, you know, a few cups of it at once, and that it can actually detox people to such a level that it triggers like a Herxheimer reaction, which is pretty amazing to think about the fact that some of the greens can be so compelling to help remove toxins, heavy metals out of the body. And again, it has a huge implication for the brain. Because again, like toxic metals will go everywhere, and the issue with you know, mercury in the brain and lead and arsenic and antimony and lead, like, I mean, these are major issues that people can face, and they will get distributed everywhere. When you eat something, it's doesn't just go like from one end to the other. It gets shared amongst all the organs, including the brain. And so now, once you understand that, then what can you put in the system that's going to help to pull all these toxins out? So some of the things I've found even more powerful than cilantro personally in my research, and again, with like we went after trying to understand these things and working to create and formulate, and with the company that I have, Well of Life, we went after like, how do we get these things together? And some of the things that we found most powerful were, one was humic and fulvic acid. So and again, like there's no like one thing that I've seen to have 100 micronutrients naturally occurring, not even with fortification, like to be added into. So the 100 micronutrients, 71 minerals, 18 amino acids, and 13 organic acids that are naturally occurring in fulvic are profoundly powerful to help chelate toxins in the body. Something that people don't really know about fulvic is it happens to have a lot of aluminum in it, which sounds crazy. Like everyone's going, what? Why would you take something that has aluminum in it? Well, because it's plant aluminum, and it's actually not synthetic aluminum. It's not what you're thinking about with a toxic heavy metal. And guess what plant aluminum does? It's the same thing, like you'll have sea fluoride, which is like naturally occurring, not synthetic fluoride. These things can actually bind to the toxic because of the weight, molecular weight, it's called, and its ability to cross cell membranes because it's nano, it's small size, and then the strong negative electrical charge. It's very profound. So like you have fulvic, its ability to go in the system to be able to then deposit nutrients into cells and then to extract toxins inside of cells. So it's known as the mailman and the trash disposal. The mailman comes and says, hey, here's your mail. By the way, did you have any trash? Okay, give me that. Takes it out. And so there's not many things that I've seen do that. And that's why I've seen like some like really, really amazing results. Things that like are kind of borderline for what I can actually even like share publicly. But there was a woman, you would imagine, she was very depressed and very anxious. So life had was not worth living for her at this point. Her name is Natalia, lives in Florida, Russian speaking, and she shared with us like 3 autoimmune conditions she's seeing. I'm not going to mention the clinic, but one of the world's foremost clinics. She's told if she doesn't get extensive chemo in 2 weeks, she'll have to have her legs amputated. So vasculitis was shutting down the veins. So her veins were a tenth the size of what ours would be. And so because of this, there's nothing that we can do for you. And steroids and chemo were being used to try to quiet the inflammation. She also had rheumatoid arthritis and Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And she's trying all kinds of things, like she's getting vitamin C IV and B vitamins IV and other things, glutathione IV. And again, these are great therapies as well, but she couldn't see anything move the needle in August last year. And again, she then starts on some of the formulas that we had so the formulas that she took had fulvic, humic, they had other like chelating, cordyceps and dandelion root, milk thistle, yucca root. That's just to mention a few in there. The parasite binders, and things that kill, like ranging from, green harvest to black walnut hulls, wormwood, other extracts. And so then you have those, and then you get into some other things like things to balance gut flora, like liquid fulvic also helps with that, but probiotics, digestive enzymes. She completed a course and things to like pull out issues that are built up in the colon, like impacted fecal matter. So like bentonite clay and psyllium husk and aloe vera and cascara sagrada bark. So again, really cool for you guys to know this, and I'm keeping this conversation really high so that everyone can just understand ingredients and how they work. And then again, like pulling out toxins out of the colon. This woman, like I'd spoke to her at the start of this year, and then again I spoke to her like a week ago when I was going in to do a news interview just for encouragement, because I was kind of nervous to get on the news. And then this woman, she's back to Pilates, swimming. She's not in a wheelchair. She was crying tears of joy when I first met her, and just through a Zoom interview like this, just by chance. And it was so profound and so meaningful. And it was just a sign to me again that anything is possible. That like there's so many people right here that are listening to this that feel like their case is so fatal. Yet this woman, she was headed for this kind of, huge issue. This was horrible, horrifying. Using the right ingredients, again, helping to quiet down that inflammation, helping her then, which in this case of leaky brain, the relevance is like she's a happy woman now, not only because her circumstances changed, but also because she feels normal, like she's got energy and she's happy. So these are all the things that we see balance when using the right ingredients, taking the toxins out and rebalancing that gut microbiome and fueling our body with a good diet and getting off. I know for a fact that she got off wheat. I found that out like a week ago. I was like asking her more because I wanted like, what was everything you did? And she did get off wheat, which helped her to turn back the clock on the Hashimoto's. So gluten sensitivity was real for her. And again, look at her, she resolved that case. And she wasn't like eating like out of trash, like, McDonald's every day. She just got stuck in the situation and due to a buildup of toxins. And so everyone should think about that. Everyone should get these toxins out by using these like really cool methods that are available to us today.
That's such an inspiring example of healing. We as a society, we've been duped to think that our bodies can't heal, to believe that our bodies break or that something is wrong with us. Like we already grow up for some reason thinking that there's always something wrong with us and that we're not perfect enough and we're not good enough. But for all of you listening, this is a perfect example of the types of cases that Jonathan is seeing, with people who he is interviewing and following their journeys around the world. This is a perfect example of the type of cases that Dr. Ryan and myself are seeing from around the world on a weekly basis, and all the other doctors that you're hearing from and all the experts that you're hearing from. We're here to teach you that you're not broken. There are answers and there are solutions. And it all starts with educating yourself and becoming more aware. of the powers that your body has to heal itself. Innately, your body knows exactly what it needs to do. And if your body isn't working right, consider that you might have some sort of interference. Jonathan did a great job today of explaining so many of the interferences and how we can eliminate those out of our body and what we can put into our bodies instead so that we can allow the healing process to actually happen. Thank you so much for sharing all this amazing information with us, Jonathan. It is just so inspiring to have had you on today.
Thank you, Dr. Villanueva. And thank you, Dr. Wolford.